We are up to Shin Lamed Vav, Seif Vav. Asovim, vegetation, Shetchavon Be'ofar, that was inserted into the ground, or into the earth, from before Shabbos, Kadeshu Lachim, that it would retain their freshness, it would stay moist. You're allowed to take the leaves and to extract them from the ground, so long as they have not yet taken root, because otherwise you're going to be tailish. And so too you've got to want that it doesn't take root. Also, but if you want it to take root, then you're going to have a problem of zriya. Says the Mishnah Berurah Lamed Vav, Kadeshu Lachim. You want to keep it fresh. For example, vegetation which looks nice and which smells nice, or memalin kad offer lach, and you fill up a vase or a jug of a pot of moist earth, and you keep it inside it to keep it fresh. Nowadays we have fridges, and it's a different world. And so too, if you insert it into the ground itself, since your intention is that it doesn't take root, you're just keeping it there as like a fridge to keep it moist and fresh. That's allowed. You can hold on to the leaves. Imagine some carrots, and you pull them out of the ground. They're just keeping them in the ground for storage. You can hold on to the leaves. If you want to smell it, you don't have to sort of dig and loosen the ground on Erev Shabbos to make a broad entry point, until you don't actually get to move the ground, because you've got a very broad opening. Because even if you move the surrounding earth, there's no problem, because you're not doing it directly with your hands, you're only doing it indirectly because of the vegetation. If you look at 26, he tells you what he says there. When is that allowed? In the soda, in a field. If you do it in the back garden, in the earth, at home, also it would be also to take it out. At home, you want to make sure that your garden looks nice, so therefore there's more of a problem with Shavigumas, but in a field you're less concerned. You're allowed to keep them in the ground and then take them out. Says the Mishnah Berurah Lamed Ches, and so too, to put it back, you're allowed to, as long as the hole in the ground was not closed up. So long as they haven't taken root. Less than 3 days, we don't think they've taken root. Certainly, they would not have taken root in such a short time, less than 3 days. Because if they've taken root, then you certainly can't take them out, because you are uprooting something from its growth, which is of course not allowed on Shabbos. And then we said, and you can put them back in, so long as you're not nischaven azriya. Says the Mishnah Berurah, the kiven shem tchuven otzmunim bekarka kashazroim v'gam mischaven azarim goz barabonan l'les lachluf l'tleish lachashosha. Even though you might leave them there longer, and you might come and take them out. So even though you're just putting there for a short time, and therefore there's no problem. But the concern is you might come to leave them there longer, and therefore they will take root, and therefore you've got a problem of zriya. Okay, fine. So just to summarize what we said in Vav, in Shin Lamed Vav Vav, we've said that vegetation, if you want to keep them in the ground, so long as you don't leave them there too long, and therefore there's no problem, they won't take root, and you're just doing it to keep it fresh and moist, that would be allowed. And taking them out as well is also, it's tiltim and atzad, and we're not worried about the surrounding earth, etc., etc. Okay, Zayin. Also, litleish afilu me'otzis she'ena nokov. You can't do tlisha even from a pot plant which has got a she'ena nokov, which hasn't got a hole at the bottom. If it's nokov, that's much worse, because then it's connected to the ground. But if it's Eina Nokov, you've got a pot plant which has got a base, which has got a bottom on the underside. So therefore, even that is a problem. Why? Says the Mishnah Berurah Mem Aleph, so too the other way around. You can't be mashke, you can't water things in a pot plant. Even if it's not on the ground, even if it's on a table or on a higher place, when it comes to Atzis Nokov, where it is perforated, then you've got much more serious of problem. Chiyuv nami yesh bozeh. There's a chiyuv involved. This is deraisa. Lefisha yonik min hakarka al yedei hanekav. Because it's perforated, then it's going to be yonik from the ground. It will draw sustenance from the ground. Shemeriach lachluchis hakarka derech sham. The moisture will be extracted from there. Even if it's a small opening, one little root can go through. Nevertheless, even if it's on the side, since it's parallel or next to the earth, which is surrounding it, for and certainly if the base is opposite the roots of the plant, then you're going to have an issa deraisa. So you cannot be toilesh from a pot plant on Shabbos or water it. Ches. Otzitz, pirush chatzi kacha zerim sham asovim. You got like a half jug, a small little, like a pot plant. Filu ein nokov, even if there's no perforation. Yesh lizohem militlei me'al gabi karko lanich al gabi yesedas. Oy ipcha. Bein shul shel eitz, bein shul shel cheres. You got to be very careful when you're moving pot plants, even if it's got a base on it, because it can be very similar to toilesh and kaitzer and zoreh and all these things. Says the Mishnah Berurah. Afilu ein nokov to gambazeh yesh chashash tlisha midrabanan mipnei shemafsik yinikosim ma'at. Because so, what is the concern of a pot plant? At the end of the day, it's not connected to the ground. The answer is, says the Mishnah Berurah, because it's yonik ktsas ma'at. It draws a little bit of sustenance somehow. V'kolshkein ma'at is hu nokov the tzorich lizoy bezeh. And certainly, if it's perforated, then you got to be very careful. Al gabi yeseidos. Even if there is nothing being mafsik between the otzis and the karka, or certainly if you put it on top of those things, and if there is a hole in the pot, then you've got issues of deraisa, of tlisha and natia, of reaping, of separating it from the ground, and of natia. So if you've got these little pot plants at home, maybe you've got some besomim in them, and you want to take them from the ground onto the table, you've got to be very careful. Says the Mishnah Berurah, mishum zoreh, because they're putting them back onto the ground. There's a problem with zoreh. And let's just finish off the Ramah. The Ramah says yichur, haga yichur, which is a branch shel ilon of a tree shenifshach, which fell me'erev Shabbos mino ilon boy peris mutar litlosh beis haperis mena b'Shabbos. So imagine, we've got an apple tree in our garden. Baruch Hashem is still delivering loads of apples from this year. And imagine a branch fell off before Shabbos and is now on the ground. So to eat the apples of that branch is no problem, because it's not connected to the tree at all, and that's okay. Says the Mechaber Tes Tzino Hamakalech Ma'im Agag. You've got a tube, a pipe, which is pouring water from the roof. She'olubo kashim va'asovim she'sosim ma'agvim kilucha. In other words, you've got a block drain, right? You've got a block drain on Shabbos, and it's blocked up with straw or with grass or whatever. And it's spilling all over the place. You can press down with your feet discreetly to kiven the mesakan al day shinuhu she'ena oise el beraglov b'makom pseida lo goz rabbanan. It's causing a hefsed, it's causing damage to the house or inconvenience, and therefore to be mesakan it b'shinui would be allowed. Says the Mishnah. What? Says the Mishnah Berurah. What did you say?
No, I actually saw someone doing this
with his foot.
Shabbos.
Yeah.
You stood. I couldn't understand. Shabbos, what are you doing?
Yeah. Okay, good. But we'll see that there are some do's and there are some don'ts. Let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah. Yes. Okay, it's good to know. Memches mutala riach boy. What is that going on? Sorry, I'm reading the wrong thing. Tes va'asovim tlushin memachon apirush derson mashpina beraglov. You can do it with your feet. You'll see, right? Because Amiri Perik Chavis to lahasirim heina vehena also afilu beragloi. But to actually remove them, that's a problem. So all you can do is just press down on it so that it somehow is masach and it's in some form or shape. But to actually remove them properly, which is a proper tikkun, and what's the issue? It's binyan and stira. It's binyan and stira. Now, this is a very interesting halacha. This is something which is actually quite common. Are you allowed to smell fruit on a tree? Could I go to my garden and then smell the apples on the end of my, the end of my garden, smell the fruits? And what about hadassim? What about other fruits? A rose bush? You're walking Shabbos, a lavender bush. Can you smell them on Shabbos? Okay, so let's take a look. Says the Mechaber Seif Yud Hadas Mechuba. If you've got hadassim which are connected to the ground, mutar l'ariach bo. That you're allowed to smell. Aval esrog, an esrog, v'tapuach, and an apple, v'chol davar haroi lachil, and anything which is edible, also l'ariach bo mechuba, shem yokutz oisoi la'achlei. So that's the rule. Anything which is edible you cannot smell, but anything which is inedible, people don't eat the hadassim, then you are allowed to smell them on Shabbos. Says the Mishnah Berurah Memches, mutar l'ariach bo, because we're not worried. You might. What's the whole concern? The concern is you might smell it. This apple's delicious. I'm going to snap it off, break it off, and eat it. But with hadassim and we're not worried about that. All you want to do is smell it, and you smelt it. And you can do that even if it's attached to the ground still. There are, however, those, says the Mishnah Berurah, who are machmir. That it's mutter, that if it's only to smell and not to eat, that it's mutter. Or the inyan etalta b'yodoi, regarding touching it, dinoi kamei le'el inyan konim harokim b'sifhei, it was aleph which we actually allowed. Yokutz oso la'ochloi. So you're allowed. The concern is if to smell an esrog or an apple or other fruit is not allowed, because the concern is shemi yokutz. You might come to cut it off and eat it. Says the Mishnah Berurah Memtes, v'chitema hanami yochel enoshche b'piv min ha'mechuba. Well, maybe you'll come to eat it, directly. You won't snap it off. You'll just eat it from, directly from whilst it's still on the tree. Well, that's also a problem. That's also a form of tlisha. What difference if you snap it off with your hand or if you take it from with your mouth? It says the Chaim, there are those people, seemingly in his day, who would actually go out to the fields and they would pluck fruits and they would eat them. Aside from the Issa D'Oraisa of Tlisha, they're actually muktzah. Whatever they actually pick is muktzah, and they can't touch them or eat them the whole of Shabbos. And you should appoint people to just patrol or announce it or advertise the fact that that is not allowed. In those
same thing be with?
Sorry, go on, Charlie.
Sorry.
Yeah, go on.
Would the same be just to look at the fruit or vegetable, whatever?
Looking doesn't seem to be a problem. Yeah, looking doesn't seem to be a problem. I think the question is just smelling it, because you're getting up close to it, and therefore the concern is that. So looking is not a problem. Yeah, in those days they would eat it. The Gemara at the end of Avodah Zarah, they would eat esrogim like we eat apples. It's a delicacy, which is for us we think a bit strange. We make esrog jam and add thousands of pounds of sugar, but in those days they would eat it. The Gemara at the end of Avodah Zarah talks about that was he sliced it and whatever. Okay, so in many places. Okay, that is that. So smelling fruit from a tree, anything which is edible you cannot, anything which is not, rose bushes, lavender, no problem, you can smell that. Okay, now next one, this is a shayla that came up when I was away Pesach. Yeah, you can make a bracha. Yeah. Now the what about taking plants and flowers on Shabbos? Are you allowed to put them back into water and to move them out of pots and things like that, vases? And you're also a little of an esrog, that's what came up. Are you allowed to put, let's say some people keep the hadassim and aravas in water, are you allowed to put them in water on Yontef? So it's actually more mekel than we realize. Let's take a look. Yudalef. Hasherech chitim u'sa'erim. If you want to soak chitim and sa'erim u'chiyotze b'hem b'mayim, how is it teledes zoreah? Soaking these things in water is a tolda of zoreah, and it's like planting it because they're going to sprout further, and therefore you're not allowed to do it. V'chayev b'kolshu, even the small amount you're not allowed to do. U'mutar lahamid anfei lonis b'mayim. However, you are allowed to place branches of trees in water b'Shabbos, so long as there aren't flowers on them, v'sheishanim and roses, shehem niftachim melachluchis hamayim, which will open up because of the moisture of the water. Okay, now we'll do the Mishnah Berurah, and then I'll read you from Simcha ben Mekayim the halacha l'maisa. Yosif cotton nun hasheira. So you want to soak this wheat and barley in water. That's a problem because that's a tolda of zoreya. Sheyisrakachu v'yatzmichu. The idea was kadei. In order that it will soften and it will sprout. Kaderech shesherin ezet tavus kodim azriya, like one does with before planting it. Toleda zoreya, dema zoreya mechaven latzmuch ipera. Just like a zoreya, when you're planting, ultimately you're doing it so that the fruit sprouts. Avzekain, so too here. Because of b'chaya adam. Duadin hasher tvu lasos mehen maltzin. So he says at the bottom it's lesses. I looked it up. It's like malt. You want to make some sort of malt beer or something like that. L'sheicha for beer. Chayev, you can't do that. You're doing the kavnos latzmech because you're doing it in order that it will sprout. For kosovo, the tekev mishanosan l'mayim chayev. As soon as you put it into the water, you are chayev. Afagav doreyat smichu. And even though it doesn't sprout, doesn't take root or develop for a number of days, nevertheless, just putting it in there immediately is also. However, to do it for your animal is okay, because it's not going to get to that point, because your animal is going to eat it. You're just trying to soften it and not to make it sprout, so that your animal can have soft seeds and things. And it's never going to sprout, because the animals will finish it off before it gets to that point. That's only true. All of this is true for the zironim which have got no liquid in them. But if they're very saturated with water, all these types of pulses and seeds, they become sort of these very laden, full type of seeds. Also, there's a problem of losh because it becomes like porridgey, and therefore you've got a problem of lisha because it'll come in shemem seafood base. Of mastis in Shabbos Yudzayin v'ayin sham beferish Mishnah Rambam iri tzimukin. Raisins or sharp pears shivesim and other dried fruit mutzah lishres b'Shabbos and mikomakam b'kovish kvoshim also. But if you want to soak raisins and just get like a raisin liquid, that would be allowed, but not to be kovish kvoshim. Not a proper pickling is not allowed. B'kol shehu. What was that going on? Yeah, even if your shore chitim and so'erim, even for a small amount, rotzolema afilu gagir echad, even one seed of wheat or barley is not allowed. Lahamid anfi'elas. Now, however, putting branches of trees in water, says the Mishnah Berurah Nun Gimel, shekoitsin b'motzachama, you cut them in the summer months, lismoyach bohen babayis. Okay, he's explaining to us guys why we need to get flowers. Okay, it might not be logical because you're going to throw them out in a few days' time, but it's l'smach ben babayis, right? But it makes the home happy. They were prepared yesterday. You put them in the vase before Shabbos. Because otherwise, I'm taking branches. They're muktzah. So these have been set aside for decorating the house, and you put them in a vase before Shabbos. Then we said that's okay, but not if they have flowers on them which are going to open up. Says the Mishnah Berurah Nun Daled v'ayin lekamon simen tov reish Nun Daled rotzolema the sham mavua de'ena muta b'Shabbos ki im lahachzir b'mayim. The problem is putting them back in water. She'amdu bo mikvar b'erev Shabbos v'loy lahosif oid mayim solim. You can't add more water. The kolshkein shelo lahachlif mayim legamrin. You can't change the water. Well, if he's there, hold the kosim mikodim demuta lamidan. You're allowed to put branches into the water. Hainu lachzir b'Shabbos latoichen. You're allowed to put it back in the water that it was previously in. Even if it was now taken out, to put them back in is actually allowed. But not to put them there in the first place, i.e. for the first time. That actually, even for the first time, you're allowed to put flowers in a vase of water on Shabbos, even if they had not been there previously. And the problem is adding water, and there the problem is actually a tircha problem. It's just excess effort. If, however, flowers are going to open up because of the water, then there'll be a problem even to return it to a vase where it was previously in. So let me just summarize it from Rav Simcha Bunim Cohen. He, as ever, summarizes it with tremendous clarity. So this is what he says. The sages prohibit placing flowers or grass in water on Shabbos for two reasons. Number one, placing flowers whose flowers are not completely open in water, putting them in water causes them to open. And although causing blooms to open is not strictly speaking considered planting, however, Chazal used it because it resembles planting. Okay, so if the roses, whatever you're getting, they're going to open up more, that is a problem to put them back in the water. And number two, the other problem is filling a vase with water on Shabbos involves tircha, undue exertion, which is forbidden on Shabbos. That's what the Mishnah Berurah just mentioned. Now, therefore, the following are therefore prohibited. Number one, filling a vase with water. It is forbidden to fill a vase with water on Shabbos, even if one only wants to put in flowers that are completely open, because filling the vase itself is the prohibited act, because it's tircha. Adding water to a vase is also problematic. One is forbidden to add water to a vase on Shabbos. However, one is permitted to add water to a vase on Yom Tov. That's allowed. For example, if one's lulav, hadassim, or aravas are in a bucket of water, a pail of water, adding water may be added on Yom Tov. Okay, Yom Tov yes, Shabbos no. Now, putting another thing that's also, putting flowers that are not completely opened in a vase containing water. Flowers that are not completely opened may not be put into a vase of water on Shabbos because it resembles planting. Okay, now, putting flowers that are completely open in a vase containing water. So this is where we get onto the things that are allowed. There is a dispute amongst authorities whether one may put flowers that are completely open on Shabbos into a vase filled with water before Shabbos. Some poskim rule that it is permitted because neither of the above prohibitions apply. Your flowers, since they're completely open, placing them in water does not resemble planting. And number two, the vase was filled with water prior to Shabbos. There's no undue exertion. There's no tircha. However, nevertheless, some poskim say that even in this situation, one should not place the flowers in water for the first time. That's what the Mishnah Berurah just said. Therefore, it is preferable to place even open flowers in water-filled vases prior to Shabbos. If, however, one forgot to put the open flowers into a vase prior to Shabbos, he may rely on the poskim who permit putting open flowers on Shabbos into a vase filled with water before Shabbos. Okay? Now, this is quite relevant. Putting completely open flowers back into water-filled vases on Shabbos is permitted according to all opinions. Okay, so therefore, say for example that you want to, you've got a vase and you want to switch one vase to the next, and you've got the water all there ready to go. The flowers are completely open, and therefore to put the flowers there, that's into a vase which already had water in it is okay.
The flowers on zich are not muksa themselves.
Correct. Yeah, they are. Correct. Because like Mishnah Berurah said, because they're there lismach. Because they're there to decorate the house. But stam eitzim you can't touch. Just one final thing, and that's arba minim. He says similarly, it's forbidden to place the lulav hadas ma'aravos in water on Yom Tov. One should place them in water prior to Yom Tov, so that your mutter is permitted to remove them and replace them and put them back on Yom Tov. Okay, so that's what I was asked on Pesach just now, that that a guy wants to know: can he put them back into the bowl? He had a bucket somewhere, and can he put them back into his thing? And the answer is yes. If they're putting them back into, then that would be okay. In the event that one forgot to place them in water before Yom Tov, then you can rely on the poskim who permit placing open flowers in a vase that was filled before Yom Tov, right? So, but on Yom Tov we said there's no tircha problem. And therefore, lulav and others, they're open already. They're not opening any further. Okay, Beseda.